Thanks for tuning into the BoshNRoll channel. Liking and subscribing the channel is free and easy, and it helps me out a lot. If you want to go a little farther with your support, I have Patreon and YouTube membership available, which includes access to the BoshNRoll Discord server, early access to things I'm working on, sideboard plans, cards I'm buying. You could have me play your deck on the channel, and the highest tiers come with individual coaching sessions. If you use the YouTube membership option, you get sweet, unique YouTube badges and emotes for the channel. If you want to play what I'm playing, you can use the code BoshNRoll to support my channel while you shop for cards at tcgplayer.com. And if you're playing on Magic Online, a cardhoarder.com loan account can let you play any deck anytime. If you want to wear your support, there is BoshNRoll merch available. All of these links are in the video description below. Thank you so much for watching. Now let's go play some Magic. Welcome to another BoshNRoll
and ThrabenU
Legacy video. Hey Phil, how's it going?
It's going really well. I'm really happy that we're getting together for this little project today.
Yeah, me too. So what this is some of the members of Phil's Discord and some of the members of my Discord, if you're interested in those communities, by the way, the links are in our video descriptions. They wanted to see us battle each other, and they got together. They pooled for a donation league from each of us to crash into each other here. And I think we have a pretty cool showcase of the Legacy format today.
Yeah, so we're going to be playing 3 matches today. I'll be playing Mad Vine against RagStill. Round 2 will feature Red Prison versus Bant. And then round 3 will feature some fan favorites, Deadguy Ale versus Boros Painter.
Yeah, that one's going to be good. That's the headliner for the day. We're about to get into matchup analysis. We're going to analyze each matchup, talk about each other's list, how we think the matchup's going to go. Then we're going to play each one. That's how the next 3 rounds are going to go. We share the deck tech and matchup analysis part of the video, but if you want to see Phil's side of the matchup, go watch it on ThrabenU. If you're on ThrabenU and you want to see my side, come over to BoshNRoll. We're going to separate the videos for our commentary. We won't have live mics while we're actually playing.
Let's get into it, and why don't we take a look at the first set of decks?
Sounds good to me. Let's talk about this first matchup. I'm on the RagStill side of things, and this one, if you've had your head above ground for the last month or so in the Legacy format, you're familiar with this deck. This is a weird one. This looks like a vintage deck and kind of plays like one too. Just the weird numbers of 2 Standstill, 1 True Name Nemesis. But this is a deck that leans into Modern Horizons 2 and just pressures you with Ragavan, backs it with Daze and Stifle. If you can figure that out, surprise, they're also a Standstill deck. If you can figure that out, surprise, here's Urza's Saga. If you can navigate that, here comes True Name Nemesis. And when the dust settles, here's Murktide Regent. And for good measure, Ragavan can dash in at any point along that curve. So this is a weird deck to play. It's a weird deck to build. I'm still marveled that anybody's brain found this, but it's extremely powerful. It's a great deck. It's a huge part of the metagame.
So, Brian, you're telling me that deck with like so many different diverse plans, it looks like it's all over the place, is actually good?
Yes, there is a weird thing that has happened here. And I don't think anyone could have possibly sat down just with a blank drawing board and said, okay, I'm going to put Ragavan, Standstill, True Name Nemesis into the same deck. Let's fill in the blanks. I'm pretty sure this was like, can we play Jeskai Ragavan? Or like now that we're in Jeskai, like what does that get us? Like I want to protect my Ragavan with Daze. Stifle's pretty good. We could put Wasteland in there. Like this looks like a Delver deck, this bottom corner of Wasteland, Stifle, Daze, Ragavan. And then they were like, ooh, Standstill is a good way to back up Ragavan. And then, ooh, what's good with Standstill? Urza Saga. Oh, that's neat. What if they... So I think that this was a thing that happened in steps. And each of these plans slightly overlaps with like 1.5 to 2.5 of the other ones. It's not just a pile of cards. There's a lot of really tight synergy in this pile. And somehow, over steps, I imagine the designers got to this.
Right. I just wanted to make sure the fans heard that sort of thing, because sometimes like we open up with donation deck lists and they have all these different plans, and from the beginning we're like, oh, I don't know. But this is one of those times where somehow it all actually manages to work, and this is probably one of the top 3 decks in Legacy right now.
Yeah, the Maniac plans or the Maniac donation decks that we get that have like. We are Delver, but also 12 post. It's like, whoa, those plans are polar opposites. That doesn't work. But when you're like overlapping the whole way up the curve, with like the rag plan overlaps with the standstill, which overlaps with the saga, which fuels Murktide region, and like all of that, like this is a machine. It just doesn't look like it at first glance.
All right, why don't we take a look at the other deck list we're going to be playing in round one?
All right, this is Phil's Jund Hollowvine.
I have been loving this deck list because honestly, it feels like you're playing vintage Magic a lot of the time. It has some strong Bazaar Baghdad vibes. Lion's Eye Diamond is just Black Lotus with upside in this deck, which is kind of crazy to say because, you know, Black Lotus is one of the best Magic cards printed of all time. But when you want to discard your hand to fuel Madness cards, it ends up doing absolutely broken things.
Yeah, Black Lotus with upside. This is the same conversation that people are having about Faithless Looting when it was dominating Modern. People were saying Faithless Looting is better than one red draw two cards. Like the discard was worth a lot. It was worth more in that Is It Phoenix Shell that was dominating Modern, and people genuinely thought draw two, discard two was better than straight up draw two at the time. And Lion's Eye Diamond just tacks that theory onto a Black Lotus, and we literally have the Faithless Looting, the subject of that conversation in the deck as well.
So this is another one of those decks that if you've been playing Legacy, you have run into this. It's extremely powerful and is one of the few like true aggro decks of the format. And we've been talking about that on the Eternal Glory podcast recently. Aggro is pretty uncommon as a like super viable Legacy archetype. But this deck just smashes.
It really does. It's pretty terrifying.
All right, so let's kind of conceptually talk about how we think the matchup is going to go. You know, Brian, where are your thoughts at?
Okay. What's going to happen in this matchup is that you're going to test my removal right away. The first test is going to be the first spell that goes on the stack, like your Lion's Eye Diamond, your Faithless Looting. Do I have a counterspell for it? That's going to matter a lot. Like the blue side of this matchup has to play like they're playing against Dredge, much more than like they're playing against Hogak. And when you play against Dredge as a fair blue deck, especially in game one where no help's coming from the sideboard, you have to basically force a will the enabler, because once they get a little foot in the door, they're just going to kick it open. So the first test is going to be, do I have force for your Lion's Eye Diamond? And then after that, it's going to be how many spot removal spells do I have versus how many threats do you have? Right? My deck does have 4 Plow and 3 Prismatic Ending in it, which is a lot of spot removal. But at the same time, if you play 2 Root Wallas, trigger Vengevine, and cast Hollow One in the first 2 turns, I have to answer the 2 4-power creatures, which Prismatic Ending cannot answer Vengevine or Hollow One, by the way. And so I have to have Plow for the big things and end the small things, and having 2 of these in the early turns isn't a big ask, but having 3 or 4 definitely is. And any residual Root Walla can clock.
All right. So I know you're famous for the whole like Island Ponder, that's a keep. Would you keep a hand that does not have a Force of Will or a Swords to Plowshares in this matchup? Like assuming the rest of the hand looks pretty good, how important are those cards to you?
I don't really want to play a Force of Will game, though I suppose I am sort of priced into it in game 1. Though I'm not going to mulligan to Force of Will, I promise you that. I might mulligan a hand that has no removal in it. I guess Stifle does a little bit of work, because you can stifle a Madness trigger or stifle a Vengevine trigger, and that's kind of a removal spell as long as you're ahead of it. It doesn't help once the creature's already in play, of course. But there's some range to like 1 Plow with a Ponder is an easy keep. A Ponder, a Brainstorm, and a Stifle with no Plow. I would make that happen. So I would need some context. Play draw matters a lot. Like, do I get to cast my Ponder before or after you do what you want to do? So we'll see. I'm pretty scared of it though, for sure. And there is the YOLO spike of I have Soul Guide Lantern as an Urza Saga Bullet in the deck, And I could just have that in my hand too. So that's the biggest wild card.
Yeah, I think game one is scary for you, and then the post sideboard games you have just so much more game. You know, you have Grafter's Cage and Tormod's Crypt, Containment Priest, maybe even Narset is worth considering. You've got good tools for the post sideboard games.
Yeah, Canonist, Pyroclasm. There's a lot of good stuff going on in my sideboard here. But game one is terrifying. Though my experience playing RagStill is that nothing stays on the board given enough time. Like, this deck grinds harder than Miracles, which is crazy to say. It grinds harder than Bant, and it's just a matter of surviving those early turns. But unlike Bant and Miracles, I have a playset of 1-mana 2/1s that I could just put in play and block with. And Ragavan's job in this matchup is definitely going to be to soak up damage or trade with the Brutewalla most of the time.
All right, when we take a look at my end of things now. So my game one plan is very much to just get you dead. I want to have either a Lion's Eye Diamond or a Putrid Imp in my opener if possible, so that I can make these very aggressive, very strong turn one plays. The Burning Inquiry and Faithless Looting based things are fine too, but in my ideal world, I would like to go close to all in on either turn one or turn two and just say, deal with this.
Yep, that's definitely what I'm worried about. The games where you try to sculpt like a turn 3 double Vengevine rather than a turn 1 double Rootwalla. I'd rather play the turn 3 game, even if it's more powerful, than the scrappy turn 1 game.
Yeah, and if I get the nuts, I can be attacking on turn 1 because of anger.
Yep.
And those are the scariest hands of all. Unfortunately, I don't think I really improve at all in the post sideboard games. If you kind of look at the tools that are in my sideboard, the things that exist here are to answer very specific problems. Ancient Grudge for artifacts, Bone Shards and Firestorm largely for creatures. But because this RagStill deck is kind of all over the place, I don't really have targeted cards for it. I'll probably end up bringing in some Firestorms, so I have answers to things like Containment Priest, or I can kill a Ragavan if I need to. But I'm not going to improve a ton, and I'm not sure that I'm actually supposed to, bring in something like a Pithing Needle to try and stop Urza's Saga, because every card that I board in is one card that is not focusing on Plan A.
Right, and on that topic for the viewers, this is open deck list. Obviously, we're talking through the matchup, but we agreed to play the list that we would play in an open field, even though I knew I was playing against Madvine and Phil knew he was playing against RagStill. We didn't jack up our sideboards. These are basically stock list, or at least our own, how we would approach an open field list.
So, Brian, everything on the table, who do you think is going to win round one?
I think I will win, obviously, because I'm going to bet on myself. That's what Disney Channel movies taught me, right? But in seriousness, I think you will win game one, and then you just need to split the uprights in game two situations, and we will see if you can do that. I hate to say it, but I think variance will come up a lot. Like, if you mulligan to 5 looking for that explodey hand and just have 2 fewer threats than if your 7 was good, or if you just keep 7 3 times, you're going to win. I think that the inherent variance in the Madvine deck, like, you're going to take discipline mulligans, and I know that you are, and that's part of playing the deck, but I think the difference between me having to deal with 3 creatures off a Multi 5 or 5 creatures off a Kept 7 is going to be the decider in this match.
Yeah, I think this match conceptually is pretty close. I think the Hollowvine deck, whatever you want to call this, Madvine, probably wins the game ones most of the time, but the post-sideboard games are scarier, and I'm just hoping to win one of the two. This is a match that I would expect to go to 3 games most of the time when you play it.
Yeah, one thing that's a relief from my side of the matchup is, while this feels like Dredge, it's not actually. Like, you are trying to win with creatures at the end of the day and not complete non-magic nonsense. Like, you are turning creatures sideways to deal 20 damage, which is just fundamental magic. And my deck does have a bunch of removal in it. if we get to turn 3, turn 4, and I start making Saga tokens, my constructs will be bigger than your creatures. So there is some very like core set limited Magic fundamentals that are going to come up in here, even in the game 1 situation. It's not like Dredge where it's literally just, okay, I lose game 1. Like, we will have game to play as long as I keep good hands and make good decisions with my cantrips and get into turn 3, turn 4. It's winnable, unlike actual Dredge.
So I hope you have kind of enjoyed this primer on kind of what we think both sides of the matchup are going to look like. We got pretty deep into the weeds here. So, Brian, anything you want to say before we get into the match itself?
Nope. Good luck. Let's do it.
All right, let's battle.
Round 1 in the quest for eternal glory against Phil Gallagher. He's on the 8-Walla Hollowvine deck. My hand is almost great. He's on the play, and I don't have white mana. This is a heartbreaker. I keep this hand with any fetch land, any plains, any source of white, but Ragavan block for a turn is not a play I can keep. So, mulligan that. Don't love this either, but it does interact with the opening salvo at least a little bit. I'm going to keep this, and does Pithing Needle have any targets in this matchup? I don't think so. I mean, I can name one of the Root Wallas, but I think having the second Ragavan will be more valuable. My plan is to Force of Will something on turn 1, like just hit a Lion's Eye Diamond or a Burning Inquiry or whatever, and just hope he doesn't have 2. Found Arid Mesa with Once Upon a Time and then played a different land. So this could be bait. I could just let this resolve, and like if he does this and then just has LED also, I'm wrecked. But if this resolves, there's a good chance I'm wrecked. I think I just have to force this and hope he doesn't have another one. Oh, it's just passing the turn. Did we dodge? Okay. Time to put Ragavan into play. Okay, Rag's in play now. Let's hope this hand... Like, I'm sure he did not want Arid Mesa off of Once Upon a Time. I'm sure he was hoping for something better than that. And I hope that's a sign of weakness and not a sign of strength. Either he hit a land while he wanted a creature, or his hand's full of creatures and he wanted a land. Like, those are the only 2 modes. There's a Blazing Rooter. Okay. I feel good about countering that thing now. I'm going to offer the trade because Prismatic Ending was insane. Like, he can let Ragavan hit him. I don't think he gets to play the control role. Alright, he's settling into it though. And it's time to fetch for Tundra. Exile this Root Walla. And I could play the Ragavan or I could dash it next turn. And I think I want to just play it. Like, this isn't a matchup that's won and lost by nickeling diming card advantage. Like, dashing in Rag next turn, even if everything goes to plan, it's still like, you know, whatever. So I make a treasure and maybe I steal a Basking Root Walla. So what? I want Rag in play, a physical body ready to engage in combat. But now I've survived the opening salvo, but I mulliganed and I had to force something, so I'm down 3 cards. And he's got 4 cards in hand over there. They could be clunkers, it could just be 4 Vengevines. Or you could just play Root Wallas and brick this Ragavan, and we're in trouble. Anger just went into the graveyard, so did Hollow One. I love seeing Hollow One in the graveyard after a Burning Inquiry resolves. But that Anger is scary. And this Pithing Needle basically doesn't do anything. Luckily, from recording the intro, I do have his deck list. Needle can name Putrid Imp or any of the Root Wallas. Uh-oh, Faithless Looting. A little more control on that one. I hope Ragavan gets in just like one time. Just give me something. It's not going to win the game on its own, like a Blue Mirror, but I would like to just, you know, get something going. Pay me off for all my defensive work I've done. Vengevine's in the graveyard. Oh no, that's creature number 1. Does he have 2 Hollow Ones right now? Oh, just 1. Ooh, do you attack? I don't think you win a game you're blocking. But if you attack, then I have Ragavan to connect. Ragavan is exerting itself on this game. If this was Delver of Secrets or just Savannah Lions or, just any other creature in Magic, this Hollow One would already be sideways and I'd be at 14. Ooh, no attack. Control Madvine. Yes, Ponder, thank you. Find that Swords to Plowshares. 2 Stifles and a Saga. The Saga is really good. Is Stifle something I want? Probably not. I'm not going to shuffle my library. I am going to play Urza Saga. And I can aim Basking Rootwalla with this Needle, or I could leave it in my hand for a future play. And I think that's better. So if I play Saga now, my construct is a 2/2 when I make it, and then a 3/3 when I make the other, and a 4/4, then it's bigger. So if I Pithing Needle right now on curve, yeah, I think that's actually worth doing. And I'm going to name Basking Rootwalla, because that's the one we haven't seen any copies of yet. 2 of the Blazing Rootwallas are already dead. And Putrid Imp is past the point where it's super relevant. If he can create 2 creatures this turn and trigger the Vengevine, I'm probably losing. Okay, that's not 2 creatures. I don't think there's... Oh, this can cast Faithless Looting out of the graveyard. Oh, wow. Yeah, if there's a Rootwalla in the top 2 cards, I'm actually about to lose. And I'm not excited about getting hit with Angie's Ravager anyway, but if they can also bring Vengevine to the party, I'm in trouble. Now the question is, does he want to chuck the Vengevine on the stack and hope that there's a Rootwalla, or wait until next turn? Alright, he's going to reload with Angie's Ravager and then make the call. If he can second main a creature, yeah, if there's any creature in those 3 cards, the second main Vengevine's coming in, and then I've lost. Ironically, I needed Stifle to stifle the Angie's Ravager Madness trigger. I think I win the game if I do that. I found the land for Faithless Looting. This one's fallen apart. Burning Inquiry. Okay, that clears all the Stifles out of my deck. Didn't do anything for him. Alright, there's the Vengevine. I am drawing wild. What does that do for me? Probably very little. Days. That is not helpful at any point. What can I do now? So 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. 4, 8, 9, 10. I can make a construct, make another, and reloading with Angie's Ravager every turn. This is not beatable. Alright, I'm dead. Yeah, that felt about right. We had an early exchange, and his deck has the mid-game explosive potential when mine only knows how to grind more. Out of the sideboard. So there's, like we talked about in the deck, there's multiple angles to this matchup. I have to clear the creatures and control the graveyard. And luckily I have the tools to do both. It's just if they line up correctly and how deep I want to go on it. Wow, there's a lot of cards I can bring in here. Even Nullrod has text. It shuts off the LED, but that's probably too slow. Probably not bringing in Narset, but we'll see. I'm going to make a tier list. So the order of things that I want to bring in. Okay, so starting with the Pyroclasm Containment Breeze column, I want all of those for sure. I think Daze is just completely unplayable in this deck, or in this matchup. I think Standstill is also pretty risky, but I might need something to reload. Pithing Needle does not have a whole lot of text. Retrofitter Foundry, I do need things I can get with the Saga, because I have to win somehow. Foundry doesn't help much in the early game, but it's pretty important to the late game. Ragavan sucks. Ragavan's never connecting. Like, maybe leave some in to dash, if I get an opportunity to dash. But that's 7 cards out. The Force Will is important. Standstill on the play might be okay, but it also might just be bad. Definitely not having any standstills on the draw. Stifle's okay. If these cards can come in, Stifle does play. Surgical. Yeah, Surgical's close. I don't know that I want it. Is it better than Ragavan? Do I go to just one Ragavan? Or do I need to connect and maintain pressure somehow? I think I'm gonna cut Ragavan for Surgical. 1 Ragavan remains. If I cut 3 Ragavans on the play, then that's a bad sign for it in the matchup overall. I get to go first. I have... Ugh. The no plateau is awkward here, but I am going to keep this. This hand needs help, though. And this is just like last game, where I am rolled up for the early game, and then the mid and late game, I'm going to need some help for. But I don't think you can mulligan a hand like this. The argument to mulligan a hand like this, let's talk about it, is that this looks like about as good of a game 1 hand as you could ask for, but in game 2 I do have sideboard cards that are pretty potent, and you could argue that I should dig for them. But I would argue that this hand buys a lot of time to find them, and I'm just gonna commit to it. And like we talked about, is very little sideboard of any kind for the matchup. I don't have to worry about Pyroblast or anything on my Force of Will. Faithless Looting. Am I going to fall for this? I'm going to let him loot. Might regret it. He loots into LED. I'll have to counter the LED. He just makes 2 Root Walls here. My hand is actually set up to fight that. Discarded a Vengevine and a Bloodstain Mire. On deck, land, cantrip. Alright, that land's great. Now I get to play my Grim Lavamancer. Lavamancer is the repeatable card advantage, something that is better than a 1-for-1 trade. That's what I am looking for in this matchup. That's how I pull ahead. That's how I stay ahead. If he goes just land Root Walla, I can plow the Vengevine and Lavamance one of the Root Wallas. That card I'm pretty sure I have to counter. Black Lotus with upside, right? Not interested. And that mana can cast Faithless Looting even if it does nothing else. Putrid Imp's real good. Does die to Lavamancer though. Burning Inquiry. That's rough. But I'm not gonna plow Imp in response. Let's roll the dice here. Angie's Ravager, which does get to trigger Vengevine, and oh no, right, because it doesn't have any mana. Cool. Needed to hit a Root Walla there and didn't. I mean, hit one in the wrong order, I guess. So that gets Vengevine back into play. It is rough that I lost Plow and not one of the endings. Containment Priest also went into the graveyard, but that does load up Grim Lavamancer. It has fuel forever now. I can ending the Imp, Lavamance the Root Walla, and Wasteland him, and just hope that's good. Also, or I can't also cast Ponder. Then I get to Ponder on the next turn. Yeah, I am going to end the Imp. That's the enabler. That one causes more trouble over time. Another one. Pretty sneaky, sis. So Wasteland will take 2 damage off the board at this point because they have the 2 Root Wallas to pump. And black or green, what's more important to his deck? Activating Root Wallas, basically casting Putrid Imp. So I think green is the color I want to take him off of. Waste the... So, okay, there's a line here. I could block with Grim Lavamancer one of the Root Wallas and shoot the other one, and just use Ponder to deal with Vengevine. And that'll save me 3 damage, but I lose my Root Walla. So I think I don't want to do that. I'm not going to block. Let's think about damage here. Yeah, if I shoot a Root Walla before damage, then I take 3 from the other. If I don't shoot either, I only take 2 total. So I actually have them kind of checkmated here. And by checkmated, I mean I'm behind, and I get to dictate the pace of how much damage I take, only slightly. Yeah, saved a damage by not getting aggro with the Lavamancer. Take out a Root Walla here. I'm going to exile lands to do this, because Murktide Region is in my deck, and it wants to eat spells. Aha, there's a Saga. Now we're cooking. So here's Saga. I can Prismatic Ending the Root Walla, and then block and shoot the Vengevine. Or I can cast Ponder, looking for Swords to Plowshares. I think I should Prismatic Ending the Rootwalla now, and then block shoot the Vengevine. I got the getcha pump on Vengevine in on the way out. That doesn't actually get me. It's just film memeing for the camera, which I appreciate. Here comes Vengevine. Can't take too many more hits from this thing, so I'm gonna block it and shoot it. Exiling, leaving all the spells in my graveyard still. He's got Burning Inquiry to finish me off here. Good job. I'm gonna start making constructs, then I'll be able to control the graveyard on the following turn. I could ponder looking for a land, try to keep velocity moving forward. If I miss the land, then I miss a construct, though. So I think this is worth doing. I would rather have Polluted Delta than Wasteland. I get to advance the board state here, make a construct. And the construct can even chump Vengevine if his last two cards in hand are just like 1-drop, trigger Vengevine. I can chump for the turn. It looks like we're getting some action here. I'm going to get another white, because I think white is more important than red for the matchup. Make a construct in the end step. Untap. Draw for turn. Get to make another one. And now I can get Soul Guide Lantern or Grafdigger's Cage. Which one do I think is better? Probably Soul Guide Lantern, because it's resilient to removal, and I could just draw a card if he's not doing anything better. I'm going to get Lantern and exile the Vengevine. That's specifically the card I'm worried about over there. I guess Cage also shuts off Faithless Looting, though. I am not going to shuffle my library, and I am going to attack for 3. If he has Ancient Grudge, he can remove my attackers. Aha! Busted. I think I'm just going to exile his graveyard right now. That takes the Ancient Grudge, takes all those lootings. Leaves me with a 1-1, but this was going to be a 0-0 next turn when he casts Ancient Grudge. And I was right to play around Ancient Grudge, getting Soul Guide Lantern instead of Cage. The Cage would have just gone straight into the graveyard. I'm going to fetch before I draw. I know I don't want the top cards in my deck. Ooh. I think I should dash Ragavan before I do anything else. Before I brainstorm. Maybe I don't attack with Construct. What if he casts Vengevine next turn? Alright, fuck it. I'm gonna push my advantage. I don't think his hand does anything right now. Exiled a land. Sure, he didn't want that anyway. Brainstorm. Murky Rege. Yeah, I think a gigantic Murktide Regent is what I'm looking for right now. And Prismatic Ending on top. And blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, now I have an 8/8 in play. He's dead in 2. This creature's bigger than any of his creatures. Let's do it. And I could still lose to the best Burning Inquiry ever. Like if Burning Inquiry discards Vengevine, Anger, and leaves him with land, Rootwalla in hand, I actually lose on the spot. LED's a pretty good one. Got a loot here. So you can loot and then re-loot off LED if throwing the whole hand in the graveyard is part of the plan. There's Vengevine and a Rootwalla. That is half of the things I just said. Still need Anger to really shut it down. Okay, did get the Vengevine. It is not good enough right now, though. Go ahead, attack. I'll block, I promise. Guaranteed. I get to cast Ragavan on blocking duty. Prismatic Ending one of the lizards. Guess I could also Prismatic Ending the LED and just make sure they don't get to Faithless Looting. But I'm just going to make them dead into the Murktide region and leave these blockers behind. Second LED. So he can flashback looting, Wing and a Prayer. I'm not even sure what he's looking for here. Like 2 Angie's Ravagers, I guess. Or Angie's Ravager plus Anger. Alright, that certainly wasn't it. That's the game, kids. Just making my blocks against my hellbent opponent, who is still memeing for the camera, and then is dead. Bang. Dead for Xaxes. Dead in 2 swings from 16. Murktide Regent. On the draw, does anything change? I don't think so. Basically, the only thing that changes is that Ragavan gets even worse. But that one of Ragavan did connect. It found a spot to connect. It also blocked to save some damage. I think that is as good as I can hope for out of a Ragavan. Wear Tear is for specifically Hollow One, by the way. Just another answer to Hollow One is something I'm extremely interested in the deck. In case you're confused why that's in. This is the deck. We're going back in. I like the idea of Null Rod turning off Lion's Eye Diamond, but like I said in the last round, the Lion's Eye Diamond will have long since done its damage when I cast Null Rod, and I have Tormod's Crypt, Soul Guide Lantern, Engineered Explosives, Retrofitter Foundry all in my deck. The Null Rod's gotta be juicy. Speaking of juicy, this hand is that. I have Force of Will for the first salvo, followed by Grafdigger's Cage. Just gotta hope he doesn't have the rare and powerful double LED opener. After some deliberation, he kept. So he must have been talking to his camera for a long time about whether this hand is capable or not. Bloodstained Mire was what he got off the Once Upon a Time, played it immediately. Featured him. That's a force. Sucks because I can answer a 1-drop easily with my hand, but I might not get a turn, or it might be too late if I wait on that particular 1-drop. This is interesting. I mean, the Stifle is a good card, but it just does not compete with Grafdigger's Cage on what's important in this matchup. So I am going to play the Cage. There is a world where Stifle is really good, like if I stifle an Angie's Ravager trigger. Angie's Ravager is specifically the card I'm worried about right now, but he would need LED, which he clearly didn't have last turn or he would have played it. And I'm just investing in my future with Urza Saga here. There's basically no upside to just cracking off a Wasteland. Now I get to hold up Stifle for this turn cycle. Ancient Grudge probably. Yep. Fair enough. Stifle's got to do the work. Yikes. There's that. Stifling the Imp's activated ability doesn't do anything because discarding is a cost. I could stifle Vengevine coming back. So here's the game. I can let Vengevine trigger and then stifle that, and I guaranteed don't get hit by Vengevine this turn. I could stifle Rootwalla and just hope he doesn't have another one. But I can answer Rootwalla pretty easily. And Vengevine I cannot answer easily. So I'm going to stifle that trigger rather than the Madness trigger. Because if he just has another Rootwalla, he plays 8 of them, I'll remind you. Then he just still gets Vengevine for the turn. And that's what I'm worried about. So he's got Putrid Imp in play right now. I'm going to just exile the Putrid Imp because that enables so much stuff. And he's got Ancient Grudge in the graveyard, so making a construct doesn't even necessarily add to the board. Like you could just flashback Ancient Grudge for one. Easy game. Now the question is, do I want to make the other construct or just waste him off green? And I think I want to waste him off green. I'm just going hyper aggro. I'm going to need an answer to this Rootwalla eventually, but I want to bet that I can beat a 1/1 creature at 18 life. Might be a regrettable bet, but I'm still going to do it. I can get Soul Guide Lantern this turn. Exile Vengevine, then draw a card. There were definitely other ways to play that turn, but I think this one gives me the best chance based on the information that I have assumed based on the way he's played this game. I think I want Soul Guide Lantern, though Retrofitter Foundry, nope. What am I even saying? Still has the Ancient Grudge I gotta respect. So I'm gonna hit the Vengevine. If he wants to cast Ancient Grudge on my Soul Guide Lantern, I can draw a card. I actually think I'm just gonna draw a card right now. That did what it needed to do for now. And now what I need to do is dig into my deck and survive. On the second land, now Rootwalla can be a 3/3. How much damage am I taking, Phil? Just 1. Alright. Got more activity. Oh, that's probably why he didn't pump it. That was really smart. Now we have to play cat and mouse around this freaking pyroclasm for the whole game. Oh, I was trying to hardcast Once Upon a Time. I'm actually much happier with that reality than he's playing around pyroclasm, because that means pyroclasm will get him eventually. Kind of hoping to see a hollow one off of this because I have the Wear Terror lined up. What I don't want to see is Vengevine. If he shows me a Root Wallow, that's also fine. Like, something that dies to Pyroclasm is fine. Basically, Vengevine and Angie's Ravager are the cards left in his deck that I don't have good answers to right now. Future Dim. Okay, cool. That dies to Pyroclasm, and it incentivizes weird stuff with the Hollow one. The Vengevine is rough. Please don't have another one. Oh, discarded Hollow one. Must have another Hollow one in hand. Yeah, that's what makes sense here. Okay, so I can kill all these creatures except for Vengevine right now. And he is all in on this play. So I'm going to take 5 right now, 6 when I fetch. I'm going to be at 10. I have 3 turns, 3 draw steps to answer Vengevine. We'll get the red. Wear the hollow one. Come on, Swords to Plowshares. Give it to me. Tormod's Crypt. Look who showed up just in time. Pyroclasm. And do I even play the Tormod's Crypt? I don't think that I do. I think that insulates me pretty well for a Burning Inquiry. Just gives me more things that could move around. And he still has that Ancient Grudge over there. So I need an answer to Vengevine in my next 2 draw steps. And that's going to be the whole game. A Root Wall. Alright, now I have 1 draw step. I gotta figure this out. Murktide Regent, let's go. True Name Nemesis, let's go. That buys me a turn. Technically. Don't like this. Now that he doesn't have green, I can run out the Tormod's Crypt just in case. So True Name's not good enough anymore. Murktide's not good enough anymore. What do I even need to do here? Is there a draw in my deck that is 2 cards? I guess Brainstorm. Brainstorm into 2 answers is the play. Here we go. Brainstorm off the top. Come on, deck. Betrayed at the final moment. That was close. If I drew this last turn, I win. But drawing it this turn, I'm 1 damage too late. I'm going to let the Root Wallow kill me for Xaxes, for style. Take out the Vengevine, and dead for Xaxes. Yep, 1 removal spell short, 1 life point short, 1 mana short. Like, that is how this matchup goes. That was a tight one. We're about halfway through the video, so let me just remind you that if you like this deck and you want to try it out, you can use the code BoshNRoll to support the channel while you shop for cards at tcgplayer.com, and you can play any deck anytime with cardhoarder.com loan account on Magic Online. These links are in the video description below. Now back to the league. For round number 2, I'm playing Bant. If you've watched my channel at all, or looked at any Legacy top 8 list basically since Oko was printed, and since Uro was printed, despite multiple bans along the way, Bant is omnipresent in the top tier of Legacy, and I'm still on it today. This is my current build that I would play in a Grand Prix tomorrow. This is the deck that I'm number 1 on, and I wanted to make sure this was represented in the spread.
So something that Brian and I are just huge believers in is the power of basic lands and a stable mana base and just being able to consistently cast your spells. And I'm known for sort of playing Red Prison style decks, and so we wanted to create this round specifically to kind of show how the existence of Bant has caused just huge warpings in the nature of the Red Prison, Red Stompy decks. But Brian, I'll let you go ahead and talk about Bant for a minute.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the full deck tech rundown, and you can watch any of my other dozen Bant videos if you want that. But specifically in the Red Stompy matchup, the Red Stompy deck used to be primarily a prison deck. Like, it would lock you out and take away your ability to play the game with Blood Moon, Chalice, Trinisphere, and then at some point present a threat when it was good and safe to do so. The fundamental changes in Bant and cards that have been printed had to change the Moon Stompy's plan, and Phil will talk about that. But Force of Negation on top of the 4 Force of Wills, that's a big change. Back in the Deathrite Shaman era, I was playing Blue White Miracles. Moon Stompy was tier 1, and Grixis Delver was tier 1. And having only 4 forces, there was a lot of stress early on, especially in game ones, where it's like, okay, if they have Chalice, can I afford to wait until my Council's Judgment gets online? I don't want to have to force anything I don't have to. But now that we have 5 of them, and a lot of Bant lists have 6, they play 2 Force of Negation, the early turns get a lot easier to survive. And more recently, holy guacamole, Prismatic Ending. This card is so good. All control players want on the planet is versatile answers. They want to spend fewer deck slots on more answers to things. And Prismatic Ending just answers Delver on curve, answers Trinisphere on turn 3, answers Chandra on turn 4. I do have the red splash, so I can get up to 4 with my Prismatic Endings in this build. That's what the Volcanic Island is primarily there for. And there's just so much going on in these decks. So many free slots that we're playing anyway that line up well against what Moon Prison is doing. It's just a totally different matchup than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, agreed. And generally speaking, I don't really think Chalice of the Void decks are super viable in Legacy anymore. There are still a few exceptions, but it used to be like if you showed up to an event with Red Prison, like you had a very realistic chance of winning, and I've won a challenge with the deck. But now, I don't think I would be caught dead playing that deck in a GP under any circumstances.
Yeah, the stock has gone way down in Chalice of the Void over the years, and even before Prismatic Ending and every white deck just had a bunch of main deck answers for Chalice, the mana curve's diversified. Ever since War of the Spark gave us the Planeswalkers, the Teferi, Narset, Karn kind of stuff. Modern Horizons, we got Ice Fang, Coatl. People figured out that Sylvan Library still exists, and it's a much more playable card with Uro that's also a 3-drop. Like, these decks don't just fold to Chalice anymore, and they used to. And there's part of what I'm doing with Bant that a lot of people aren't doing is a lot of people are on 19 lands with 2 or 3 Abundant Harvest, and I'm on 20 lands with 0 Abundant Harvest. And I've just found that hitting my land drops, skipping the middleman, like if I have to spend turn 2 casting Abundant Harvest into a daze just to try to find my second land, I feel like I lose those games more often than when I just make my land drops from my hand and start casting my more expensive spells. And I like that plan just even in the blue matchups, the days matchups, but when you do run into Chalice of the Void, you really don't want those extra 3 1-drops in the deck, especially when they're counted as lands for your mana base. That's just risky business, and luckily I am just pre-built for Chalice matchups.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. Looking at your sideboard, like you're probably not going to sideboard too much for this matchup. You have the tools that you need in the main deck. You'll do some fine tuning. The EE and the Hydroblast are just like absolutely slam dunks, and maybe you can consider a few other things. But game 1 looks real good.
Yeah, I mentioned this on Eternal Glory this past week. I wrote up a full sideboard guide for my Patreon. By the way, if you want that, go join the Patreon. Links in the video description. But I wrote up a full sideboard guide for this 75 for the Patreon just the other day. And when I was writing up the matches like lands and Red Prison and stuff, I was like, oh, where's my Wilt? Where's my Return to Nature? Is this deck misbuilt? Like, it just that muscle memory kept like triggering, like, oh no, I'm missing something. But I'm actually not, because there's just 3 Prismatic Endings in the main deck. You don't need a Disenchant in the sideboard anymore. You just have 3 Vindicates in the main. So this is so streamlined right now, and I think it's gonna be rough on you. But what has Moonstompy done to adjust?
Okay, so the name of the deck is often Moonstompy, right? Notice what is missing in this deck list. It is the Blood Moons.
There's not a single moon. There's not even a Magus. There used to be 8,
That's
now
no
there's 0.
moon. The two of them are chilling in the sideboard, just in case we need them. But this deck has transformed a lot. Full disclosure here, I have never played this exact 75, but when I was looking for, kind of a deck list to play for this, I saw this Urza Saga version and I was super intrigued. I like where the design space is at. So conceptually, the idea is that the Blood Moon effects are not super strong right now. There's a lot of decks that are going under them if you have to play on turn 2. If your opponent starts out with a Ragavan and just can make all the colored mana they need, or they can just cast the Ragavan after a Blood Moon, that's not super effective. And the Bant deck just has so many ways to deal with a Blood Moon, whether it's just like drawing the basics naturally or prismatic ending it away, or Force of Vigor in post sideboard games. Wilt is an option even though you're not playing it. That Moon is probably not the best place to be. So instead, you're playing Urza Saga, which can either be a turn 1 play, and you follow it up with a piece of fast mana of some kind and just start pumping out constructs. Or, after you've gone through your initial wave, it can be your inevitability for the games going long.
Yeah, looking at this list, I'm much more afraid of Goblin Rabble Master than I am of Blood Moon. I'm much more afraid of Fire Flux Squad than Magus of the Moon. There's only 3 Trinispheres. That's probably right. Drawing the second one's always bad, and being able to pump out constructs with Saga under Trinisphere is cool. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on with this deck right now.
Yeah, and one of the subtle things that has changed the deck a lot is the presence of Fury, which is the red card from the recent Evoke cycle. And it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. So this means that, sticking, a Teferi early on isn't just going to be, a lights out thing. A lot of times, like, a Teferi goes, bounces the chalice, sticks around, bounces something out. Fury gives you a way to finish those off while clearing the way for the Goblin Rabble Masters and Legion War Bosses. It also does 4 damage, which is a super convenient number because of the existence of the big fat booty on Endurance.
Yep, true that. Definitely, there's too many creatures for the Bant deck to answer 1 for 1 here. And all of your creatures being more than one thing. Like, the Saga's 2 creatures. These are X creatures, where X is the number of turns they're in play plus 1. Even your mana is sometimes creatures. Like, Bant's doesn't have enough Swords to Plowshares to answer all this, so at some point I'm gonna need to put a 3/4 Endurance into play, and then a 3/3 Shark Typhoon Shark into play. I'm gonna need to get a trade off Ice Fang Coatl. Like, and Fury being able to pressure that side plan, like getting a body into play. Like, if you can kill an Uro after I do all the work to get it into play, like, that's gonna set me back pretty hard. Like, this deck definitely looks like it's built with the present metagame in mind in a way that is extremely unfortunate for me.
Yeah, and here's where I'm going to blow some viewers' minds. Okay, so I'm the Chalice of the Void deck, right? Chalice of the Void is not going to be in my deck for the post-sideboard games. I just don't think it is going to be particularly good in this matchup in a lot of cases, because having the Pyroblasts and Red Elemental Blasts is so important for dealing with the Uros.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm gonna have every answer to Chalice in my deck anyway, so you get value by throwing them out and making my answers line up poorly. And again, Prismatic Ending. Nothing lines up poorly against Prismatic Ending except for 6-drops. So there's that going on. But if I did have Wilt, if I did have Disenchant, Return to Nature, those cards get a whole lot worse when they're answering 1 Saga token out of the 3 artifacts that card produced instead of just 1 clutch piece like Chalice. And you're just inviting more 1 for 2 trades and baiting me into them if I board in that way. So
Yeah.
while also freeing up your good sideboard cards, that just makes so much sense to cut the Chalices.
Yep, and like, you just have to respect them, especially when I'm on the play. Because if I do decide to, like, oh, I'm on the play, I'm up a game, I should just, go Ancient Tomb Chalice on turn 1, play some creatures, and hope that gets you dead. Like, that's a plan that you just absolutely have to respect.
Yep. I mean, I'm certainly not gonna cut any answers to Chalice of the Void. Even though we had this conversation, I'm still just gonna have all the answers in that I could have. Against this build, I might cut the Force of Negation, just if I had open deck lists even without this conversation, because you have so many creatures. But Force of Will has to be in the deck. Anything that can point and click remove any permanent is going to be in the deck, even if it is restricted. Like, I would play Disenchant over just some random other card. Just anything that can point and click remove something is going to be in the deck.
All right. So all this information on the table. Who's going to take down this round?
I think that Bant is favored, and I think it's by a lot, but the cheese factor is there. Bant is still a control deck. Its answers still have to line up to the threats. Like, you're still asking hard questions, and Bant has a lot of good answers to hard questions, but only one War Boss or one Rabble Master needs to sneak through one turn of staying alive, and then I'm behind and it's tough to catch up. So I think it's me, but it's not foregone. This should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that's why we chose this matchup. Like, I submitted this deck list, and I actually suggested this exact matchup, knowing that I would probably lose, but I thought the conversation around it was super interesting. If I adjusted this list specifically to play against Brian, and like all of a sudden there's like a retrofitter foundry in this list, and the fourth war boss instead of these bone crusher giants, like I could swing things more in my favor. But this deck really needs the tools that are there to help beat like the Delver and the Ragavan base decks.
Yep, this is gonna be good. I'm honestly stressed out about it. Like, even knowing, like, this is the sort of matchup where even knowing that it's good for me, even if it is like 70%, which I don't think it is. I think it's probably closer to like 60, 65 maybe. But even if it was 80%, 20% of the time, you're still gonna cheese me out. And if there's one thing that I hate, it's getting cheesed out. That's why I like Bant. It's very resistant to cheese, but the pressure is there, and I'm a little worried about it.
Oh yeah, this is the sort of deck where like you can be 5-1 in an event, and then you get paired against this, and it's like, oh, I'm a little nervous, even though this is favorable.
Yeah, like, if you asked me before the Grand Prix, if like a genie appeared and was like, would you like to play against Red Prison every round of this event? I would snap off yes. Just on the math, on the numbers, I'm likely to top 8 that event. Like, I'm likely to just run roughshod over that field. But if just two of those people have RNGs on their side, or I take a rough mulligan to 5 and I end up one removal spell short for that third creature that you have, like, these things can happen. The turn 1 Trinisphere on the play when my hand is just 3 Swords to Plowshares, like, those are the sort of things that this deck puts you to the test on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the skill in piloting a deck like this one is navigating your mulligans and your first 2 turns. Like, you have to pick the path to victory very quick consistently if you want to do well with this deck, because this is one of those things where if you miss sequence your pieces, like your threat versus lock piece order, that sort of stuff, you're just going to lose to yourself.
Yeah, I tell this story all the time, so my regular viewers have probably heard it before, but in round 1, game 1 of Eternal Week in Paris in 2019, my opponent was on the play, and they mulled to 5, and then went Chrome Mox, Pitch Goblin Rabblemaster, Ancient Tomb, Blood Moon, passed the turn with 1 card in hand. And I went Basic Island, Arkham's Astrolabe, passed the turn with 7 cards in hand. And the game was already over. But my hand did not have Swords to Plowshares in it. If they had pitched their Blood Moon and cast their Rabblemaster, I would have lost that game on the spot to that same opening salvo. But there's no way for them to know that. But this deck, it removes that question. Like, you have the 3 Trinispheres, but other than that, you're jamming a 3-drop into play. And that's always been the scarier plan against control decks.
All right, let's just get into things.
Let's do it. On the play in the second round against Phil, this time he is on Moon Stompy with no moons, but does have Chalice. I am going to keep this. He's on the creature version of the deck, and Icefang Coatl and Swords to Plowshares both do work there. It's awkward that I have so many non-basics in my hand, though. it's going to be hard to give this Squaddle Death Touch. That's like a multi-turn line I'm going to have to work out if I decide to pursue it. This is a hand that is extremely soft to turn 1 Trinisphere. He only plays 3 of those, but just mulled to 5, looking for that explosion. I guess I can fetch basic planes with my Strand to cast Plow, and then I can cast Sylvan Library off of Tropical Island basic planes on the following turn. And then I have a fetch land available to clear cards I don't want with Sylvan Library to get basic island or forest and cast Coatl, which can then is just 1 permanent away from gaining Death Touch. Yeah, it's Flooded Strand is the start, basic planes. I'm rooting for Goblin Ravel Master here and not Trinisphere. We pitched a Fury to Chrome Mox. Saga. Alright, this looks like a Chalice keep, or he's just grinding with Saga. Alright, got a Chalice. Swords of Plowshares just got a lot worse. That's okay. Right, drawing basic forest is pretty nice. So now I can play this, fetch basic. Do I even want the basic planes, or do I just go straight for island at this point? I guess I can island next turn. So I will get the planes. Make sure I have Death Touch rolled up. Get some card selection. He's got 2 cards left in hand over there. If I can start filling my hand with answers, or if I can answer the Chalice, then I can start doing stuff. So, City of Traders Go was the play. I have Library now. I don't want this island, and I probably don't want Force of Negation either at this point. I don't think it's worth 4 life to me. Yeah, his build of the deck is mono creatures. I should probably look at what bullets he can tutor for. Got Needle, Shadow Spear, and Chrome Mox are the bullets he can tutor for. Okay. So I have to fetch this before he resolves his Saga trigger, or else the Pithing Needle's in play, naming Misty Rainforest, and we're just in trouble. Do have a Death Touch Coatl for the first construct, and it's a cantrip creature, so it covers the 2-for-1 nature of Urza Saga. It's not a complete loss. This Chalice is posing problems for me right now. There's no doubt about that. Does he want mana? Does he Needle to Fairy? Needle Shark Typhoon? I think Needling Shark Typhoon is a reasonable line here. I'm very interested in Teferi or Prismatic Ending off the top of my deck, though. Oh, he does want the mana. Interesting. That's cool. I'm also a Dress Down deck. That's pretty good here. But I'm going to get my trade with the Coatl right now while it's available to me. Draw the card, save 5 damage. Sounds pretty good. Ooh, Stomp. Never mind. Gonna need that Dress Down. So I take 5. To look with Library. Moment of Truth. If this Library delivers, I'm good. If it doesn't, I'm dead. Alright. The Library did not deliver. I'm actually just dead. It's got 10 over there. 10 power. If I pay 4 life to keep the Swords to Plowshares, I get to look at an extra card next turn, which is my only chance to still play this game. So I'm going to put this on top. And then I think I have to pay 4. As much as that hurts. It is what it is. This Chalice is just shutting me down. This is what I was talking about in the deck tech of if you rely on your cantrips too much and don't just have banger spells to cast straight up, bad things can happen. That Stomp was life and death. Like, I could be at 14 life right now with facing down a smaller creature and only one of them, and yeah, that was just a really good 1 card left in the hand. Maybe I should have considered that when he tutored for Chrome Mox, but I only had 1 play available. It's not like I could have played around it. Was this the Fireflux squad? Jesus. When this attacks, you may exile another attacking creature you control. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library. Until you reveal a creature card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, and the rest on the bottom in any order. Okay, I don't think that's a thing that he wants to do. Like, all of the creatures in his deck are just worse than... Oh, now I'm just dead. 6, 10. Yeah, alright. That extra artifact. Yeah, just absolutely crushed didn't draw an answer to Chalice. I had Sylvan Library, a shuffle in between, another Sylvan Library, saw 7 extra cards that game, and drew a card. Didn't find an answer to Chalice, and we can see that even though Chalice doesn't hard shut the deck down anymore, I did have a deck full of answers. None of them are in my hand, and if I can just cast these Swords to Plowshares, this game is unlosable, but I can't. Sideboard time. My sideboard is good, and his is not. So Hydroblast, Force of Vigor, Engineered Explosives, all easy. I don't think I want Priest or any of these other things. Back to Basics has merit, but I think that my mana is more important than his. Like, I just need to be able to cast my spells. I don't like Force of Negation in this particular matchup. I don't like Hull Breacher in this particular matchup. Terminus is great. Dress Down's great. Teferi's great. Jace is fine, I guess. Shark Typhoon's great. Maybe it is a Jace that gets the chop here. His sideboard has 3 Red Blasts, some Dead Gons, Goblin Cratermaker, Chandra. Chandra is pretty messed up. Yeah, beating Chandra is going to be tough. Just gotta make sure he doesn't get 6 mana, I guess. I could play Mystical Dispute, just as another 1-for-1 counterspell. Like, obviously it'll never be cheat mode, but just 3 mana hard counter for a creature or anything is not the worst. The question is, what would I cut for it? And I think that is where this conversation breaks down. I think this is as good as it's gonna get. Let's do this thing. It just brought in 2 answers to Chalice and 1 generic good answer for 3 cards that are less good than that. This hand is pretty good. I'm going to keep it. It's lacking a removal spell, but it is not going to lose to Chalice. Uro is among the finest cards that I could ask for in a matchup like this one. He's on 5 again. It was good enough last game. Let's see if that's still true. I hope not. Having all of my colors set up is going to be important. I have 2 double green spells in my hand, so I'm leading on the fetch land, the open-ended fetch land to fetch a duel rather than committing to a basic right now. That smells like a Pyroblast all day. Right, Jace the Mind Sculptor, not a good card, but it's an easy pitch to force, so I'll take that. I'm not just going to ram my Brainstorm into a Pyroblast. I would like to cast Brainstorm this turn, but I don't have to. Chrome Mox, that gives me a residual thing laying around if I need to destroy a Chalice. So Force of Vigor has 2 targets right now. Let's see what this Brainstorm offers me. Brainstorm in response, didn't find a Swords to Plowshares, that's a crying shame. I did find land number 3, which is pretty important. So if what does this game look like? I'm going to pitch Jace to Force to counter the Rabble Master right now. That is going to happen. And then I could go hyper aggro and just... Oh yeah, I'm actually going to Force of Vigor both of these mana sources, leave him with Mountain in play. I'm going to 2-for-1 myself twice this turn cycle, but I think it'll be okay. If that's the line, I think... Yeah, I have to pitch Endurance to Force of Vigor. So I'm going to put Shark Typhoon and Brainstorm, or Brainstorm then Shark Typhoon on top of the deck, because I want the Typhoon in my hand more than I want Brainstorm. I could also just commit to Uroing up into Jace and getting the game over that way, but Uro gets the game over himself. Okay. Force pitching Jace, and then I'm going to Vigor him into the Stone Age. Bang! Get those out of here. And I want to draw the Shark Typhoon. And it's time to fetch lands that can cast Uro. So Tropical Island. And I think I want the Savannah here. And here's Uro. The front half anyway. Gotta find a land for the back half. Didn't find it yet, but Brainstorm Shark Typhoon in action. Ooh, Ancient Tomb was a good find there. Alright, War Boss. Tough stuff. Terminus is in my deck. I could also just draw a land and put Uro into play right now. And put him on Pyroblast or Bust. Swords to Plowshares, I like that. I'm gonna brainstorm first. Oh, nice. Now I don't have to Swords to Plowshares. I like that even better. I can put these Icefang Coatl back under the Terminus, though I think I want Swords to Plowshares under the Terminus. Or what's the worst thing that could happen this turn? Blood Moon, probably. So I'm going to put the Plow under the Terminus and leave my blue cards in my hand in case I need to force something. And I'll just commit to taking whatever amount of damage happens this turn. I probably Force of Will Fire Fist Squad. No, I definitely don't. I don't care about that either. Alright. So I'm taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm taking 6, going to 12, and then I get a tasty little sweeper. Here's my 6 damage. I'm glad the War Boss came first and the Rabble Master came second, because Rabble Master would have done a million there. Terminus time. Sweep them up. Then I pass the turn. I can Coatl on their turn. It does not have Death Touch, so I gotta hope they don't have a haste creature right now. 1 card left over there. It's time to pull ahead while I can. Really looking for that land for Uro. That's gonna be how I end this game very quickly. Got there. Gonna get Tundra. Yeah, I'm just committing to this Coatl never having Death Touch and Uro being a better play. There's Uro. Is your last card in hand Pyroblast? If it is, Uro will be back next turn. And it wasn't. Alright, so now I have Uro in play, and I'm rolled up with Force of Will and Swords of Plowshares against the 1-card hand that clearly doesn't answer Uro. Uro also races Chandra, Awakened Inferno. I don't even care if he goes, like, City of Traders, that card. Sure, give me an emblem. I'm gaining 3 a turn. Add the Pyroblast. I'm not even going to force it. That's not important. Uro will be back. It already drew 2 cards, gained a bunch of life. And I can hardcast Force of Will now, and if they don't do anything I need to Force of Will, I can make a 3/3 Shark, which also puts card number 5 for Uro into the bin. And we can assume that he top decked the Pyroblast, and that was the draw for the turn, or else would it just countered Uro on the previous turn? Oh yeah, we're at that phase of the game. You can have that. Time for a 3/3 Shark. This is what I love about this build of Bant, when you just get to hold up Force of Will, and if they don't cast anything you need to counter, you just get to win the game instead. Uro is coming right back right now. I can tap the Volcanic Island because there's no red cards in my deck. Dress Down is nice. I don't think I'm going to need it this game, but I have it. And we have a real clock. This game's going to end very quickly. I'm still not going to Force of Will a Pyroblast it on Uro. The way I lose this game is like Firefight Squad flipping some nonsense into play or whatever. Okay. I have Swords to Plowshares. Get rid of that. That should draw the concession. And it did. Same sideboard plan, I imagine. I don't think anything changes from play to draw. My cards that are good in this matchup are just good or bad in the matchup, and that's the whole story. He did tell me he was boarding out his Chalices, but I'm not going to take that as gospel. And Chalice, I think, is still one of the best and most important cards in the matchup, even if I have answers to it. But I'm going back in. Same deck. On the draw for the 3rd game, this is not a keeper. This is the old no-lander. Nah. This one I am in for. The Force of Will is a nice little catch-all, and Hydroblast being the Counterspell Vindicate split card that you're looking for. Time to keep this and send Volcanic Island to the bottom. Bill is on 5 again. Done a lot of mulliganing, but that is the main decision that deck gets to make. The red Stompy deck gets to make 2 decisions in a match, and it's the mulligan decision and it's the sequencing decisions. And those are critical to the deck's success or failure. And you can't be afraid of like, oh, I just don't want to go to 5. Like, you just can't do that because you need a 5-card hand that lines up appropriately for the matchup. He's down to 4 though, which is starting to get dubious. Kept 4. Everything that he wants to do quickly spends extra cards to do it. Like, cards are a significant resource for that deck because of Simian Spirit Guide, Chrome Mox, just all of those things are just, they convert into mana, and mana is the deck's primary plan, like just having more mana. So fewer cards means less mana and less options. So hopefully this Force of Will hand can line up. Like if he goes all in on one play, the Force of Will can line up with it. Hydroblast, probably not going to be able to protect against Hydroblast. Alright, there's Coatl, and I have 3 snow sources lined up already. We're just going to start parading red spells onto my Hydroblast. Counter target spell if it's red. That's the answer. Now I can Brainstorm and fix this hand up, or I can Coatl. And Coatl won't have Death Touch this turn anyway, so I think it's Brainstorm time. Can put back... I have multiple blue cards to pitch to Force, so I think I want to put back Misty Rainforest and Prismatic Vista. And I play the Snow Forest. I can fetch Snow Plains next turn. I can Force a Will something, and I have a Coatl with Death Touch lined up for next turn. Or just jam Sylvan Library, depending on what they do. Got that one locked up. The technology is there. We have the technology. This card. Exiles another target attacking creature. So, do I want to take 4 from this, eat it with Coatl next turn, and save my Force of Will? And I think the answer is yes. I can take 4 from this thing when it's attacking alone. That's a deal. And I can Force of Will a Pyroblast if he has Pyroblast for my Coatl. The main question now is, do I want to fetch before or after I draw a card? Do I want that land on top of my deck, basically? And I don't think that I do. Here comes the Fireflux Squad. I am going to fetch the Plains before I do anything else, because that gives me a chance to just draw Plow or Terminus off of this Coatl. It's a pretty big deal. So it's in play. I'm at least getting the draw. Got it. Got there. Just have everything covered in every direction right now. It's got to beat this Urza Saga. And the Dress Down is good at doing that. Very much like to draw a land this turn, so I can play my library and still have Dress Down available. Come on, land. Alright. We're in there. Here's my library. Time to consult the sideboard again. Relic of Progenitus, Tormod's Crypt, Shadow Spear, Pithing Needle. I suspect Relic of Progenitus will be the grab. Which is nice, because that means pitching Uro to Force of Will doesn't feel so bad. Still, I hope I don't have to do that, but it feels less bad than it did just a second ago. I can lose this game to double Pyroblast, I guess. That's the line that kills me. I could have played around double Pyroblast, but that gives him 3 extra mana. Like, I could have Dressed Down in the upkeep, but I want him to commit to this activation before he gets access to that. And I'm actually just going to let all this happen. Because if he also plays a creature this turn, like if he gets Chrome Mox with this, pitches a card, casts Rabblemaster, I can Dress Down before it makes a trigger, and nothing gets haste. The constructs all die. And then I can untap and clean everything up pretty cleanly. I would be getting Relic of Progenitus here, but that's without knowing what 2 cards are in hand. Relic of Progenitus confirmed. Let's dress him down. Really hope I don't have to force a Pyroblast here, but I will. I kind of hope he pops Relic digging for Pyroblast, and that leaves my Uro in the graveyard for next turn. This is the strength of Dress Down, by the way. It's specifically in the deck to sweep up construct tokens. It does other stuff too, but it's so good against the Saga decks. He did, in fact, pop the Relic, looking for, I assume, Pyroblast. Didn't find it. Now Uro gets to party. He still needs to find some food, but at least he is present on the board, or present in the graveyard. Simian Spirit Guide. There, we're back to that. Library trigger. It's time to pull ahead in this game. Ooh, I could just Jace with Swords to Plowshares rolled up. Do I want to pay life? Probably not. So I put Prismatic Vista on top and Prismatic Ending on top. Then I can Jace and plus. I think controlling what he can do right now is worth doing. Now you can have Shadow Spear. My plan is to control the creatures at this point. I have Force of Will and Swords to Plowshares. He has one creature in play that Plow answers straight up, and Force of Will answers whatever that mystery card is, if I even care about it. I don't care about Shadow Spear if he doesn't have a creature, and then Jace can just control the game forever after this point. And if the hand is just a brick, if that card in hand doesn't do anything, then Uro gets to start drawing cards, and Library's already in play, and we're just doing it here. Play the Shadow Spear, that's fine. Have that one covered. I'm gonna let him equip Shadow Spear and get into combat before I cast the Plow. He gets an extra life that way off the Plow, but what I really am worried about is that last card in hand being a Rabble Master. Like if I Plow this thing in response just to save one irrelevant life point, that is not... And then he resolves Rabble Master, or I have to force Rabble Master when I had it covered anyway. That's just not good. Not good business. I put Volcanic Island on top. Pay for Prismatic Ending. I'm about to Uro anyway. I get to Uro here. Gain that life back. Make an extra land drop. I don't have the cards to escape Uro. I think it's time to brainstorm with Jace. Just for one turn. I want to roll up another blue card. Make sure I'm covered. I can't do anything with this Force of Vigor. And do I need Prismatic Vista, or are all these cards just good? I think I can float the Prismatic Ending. And I have Force Blue card plus Plow available, and I can line up Uro arriving next turn. Spirit Guide again. Committed to the beats. Did not equip Shadow Spear. So I can draw for turn and then fetch in response to the Sylvan Library's trigger, because I don't really want Force of Vigor right now. I'm going to get rid of this, get a basic forest. That's Uro mana. 2 fresh cards. 1, 2, 3, 4 cards in the graveyard. So I can go top, fetch, brainstorm. Like I'm just trying to put Uro into play. I'm going to see how reasonable that is to do, like what it costs me. And I can still leave up Plow the whole time. I can still activate Jace. Tropical Island. Cast Ponder. That's juicy. Do not shuffle the library. Jace, Fate Seal you. Now I don't need to activate Jace. I can cast Uro while leaving up Plow and or Coatl. I actually do want to bottom the Rabble Master. That's not the kind of card I want to play against. Maybe I'm supposed to leave him with Rabble Master just because it's a known quantity that I have covered. Like Uro will block the Spirit Guide forever, and Coatl I can Plow the other thing. Yeah, maybe I was supposed to leave him with that. I don't expect it matters much. Chandra Awakened Inferno is the only card that's even going to resolve here, and I don't think I'm worried about that card even if it does resolve. And when your blue deck is not worried about Chandra Awakened Inferno, you're usually in a good spot. Fiery Confluence. What modes have we chosen? 2 damage to each opponent 3 times, so he's just trying to burn me out here. Sure. I'm at 9. And you're Hellbent. And dying to Uro right now. I get to cast Coatl. That puts 7 power on the board, bounce Spirit Guide with Jace, and just attack for 7 right now. And that is my opponent's life total. Put on top. And I'll even insult to injury. I'll use Teferi instead of Jace. Bang. After the insult I suffered, dying for Xaxes in round 1, I'm killing him for Xaxes in round 2. Though this game was much less close than that one. Alright. 1-1 going into the decider. The feature match, the title card of Painter versus Deadguy Al. We're about halfway through the video, so let me just remind you that if you like this deck and you want to try it out, you can use the code BoshNRoll to support the channel while you shop for cards at tcgplayer.com, and you can play any deck anytime with cardhoarder.com loan account on Magic Online. These links are in the video description below. Now back to the league.
For the final round here, we're going to be looking at sort of the fun level of Legacy, and we're going to be doing a Deadguy Ale versus Boros Painter matchup. Now, Deadguy Ale is a deck that maybe not everyone is familiar with. The 30-second deck tech version is that it is a white-black Stoneblade deck that leans much more heavily on the black, oftentimes trying to do something like cast a Dark Ritual into some combination of Thoughtseize, Hymn to Turok, and Dark Confidant. And it's looking to really kind of use relatively high card quality very quickly. And it's hoping that a singular card can take over the game. And Cauldron Complete really added another layer to this deck because it makes it so that the Stoneforge Mystics can really end a game quickly and provide a very real clock.
Yeah, Cauldron really helped this deck out because generally Deadguy gives you a lot of time, even if you're like slowly choking out over that time, and as time passes, things get worse and worse for you and better for Deadguy. Like, at least it creates the illusion that it's slow and you have a chance. Like, if you have something like Terminus or Supreme Verdict or a Engineered Explosives that could kill two Bobs that you could still rip, like, you can feel like you're in the deck or in the game, but Cauldron's just like, nah, you're out of here. The Hymn to Turok cleared your plow on turn 1. Now you're dead. See you later.
So this is a deck that is near and dear to my heart, just because it is fun to play. Like, Deadguy Ale is not the deck that I pick up to win a tournament. It's the deck that I pick up because, like, I want to live the old glory days of like playing with like cards that I enjoy. And you know, there's something special about just going Dark Ritual, Hymn to Turok that makes me feel all the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, this deck is a classic. Chris Pikula got second place in, I believe, the first ever Legacy Grand Prix with this deck. It was a homebrew from his team, Team Deadguy. So I finally have the final answer straight from the horse's mouth. Chris Pikula explained this himself. There's all sorts of legends about like where the name Deadguy Ale came from. It turns out in the 90s, Chris Pikula and his friends wore t-shirts for the band Deadguy so often that Brian David Marshall just started calling those Dead Guys, and they ended up teaming together, calling their team Deadguy because they always wore the Deadguy shirts, and Brian David Marshall was already calling them the Dead Guys. And then it turns out there was also a beer called Deadguy Ale, and when Chris Pikula brewed this deck to play at that Legacy Grand Prix, he was like, oh, it's perfect, Deadguy Ale, because I brewed it, and I'm Team Deadguy. So that is the true story of where this deck name came from.
It's the greatest.
Yep, that early 90s stuff. These days, this would just be called Orzhov Stoneblade.
Yep. All right, so Deadguy Ale, I think, conceptually has two major problems with it that kind of keeps it from being a real contender. Number one is that it has a huge I drew the wrong side of the deck problem. You don't have cantrips in this shell to, you know, oh, brainstorm, put back the things that I don't need. You don't have ponders to sculpt. So, you know, you're stuck with what you draw. And when you draw like Fatal Push and Dam and Prismatic Ending versus, you know, say a Doomsday deck or something, your deck looks absolutely embarrassing. And the second problem with this deck is that basically nobody plays it. And that means that people aren't iterating on it, constantly tweaking it, constantly improving it. And most of the Deadguy Ale content that's out there is, well, mine. So there's so many different ways you can play this deck. You know, you can adjust with Bitter Blossoms, you can do Sedgemoor Witch and, you know, throw an infinite combo into the deck. If you're playing this deck, you kind of have to say, like, this is the pile of cards that I want to play, you know, figure out your reasoning for why you want to do that, and, you know, click submit and hope it works out.
Yeah, that I talk about that every time I play a non-blue deck. Like, it's the Maverick problem, it's the Elves problem. There is no brainstorm coming, and at least with a deck like Elves, everything is working in the same direction, and you just draw more of it, and eventually you'll hit a payoff. But having just wrong cards you can draw with like you said, the Fatal Push versus combo, or like the Thoughtseize versus Madness, like those sort of things are just, they're not great. And but this deck does a really good job on raw power. Like Hymn to Turok is just a card that used to define Legacy. Like there's been multiple eras where Hymn to Turok was just defining Legacy, and then it would fade out for one reason or another, and then it would come back to redefine Legacy again. And currently, Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, is keeping Hymn to Turok down, but you don't need to worry about that in this matchup.
Yeah. Kind of last thing that I want to say about this deck is that because the deck has a heavy black skew and it wants to have black on turn 2 very consistently, I'm lighter on the wastelands and things like basic planes and additional white flex cards than I normally would be. I don't know that I have everything figured out perfectly here, and in fact, I probably don't. But you'll notice some weird numbers here, like a 2-2 split on Swords of Plowshares versus Prismatic Ending. This is me kind of just going with my gut and saying something like this is probably a good split, but it's possible that, these numbers need to be adjusted still.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about it, but Dauthi Voidwalker is a pretty significant upgrade to a deck that hasn't gotten a lot of significant upgrades in a long time. Like Cauldron Complete is one of them that we mentioned, but Dauthi Voidwalker, and specifically in the matchup that we're about to play, I'm worried about this card.
Well, why don't we talk about your deck and then we'll talk about the matchup.
All right. I am playing mostly Boros Painter. This is a deck that I played on the channel a week, 2 weeks ago at this point, by the time you're seeing this, and this was a donation deck from a subscriber named Undyne, and they sent me a Mardu deck, and after playing the League, I realized the black didn't do much and the white was really good. So I just sort of recrejiggered the deck into this configuration that there's still a small black splash. Like I could still kick the Aether, or the Nile Spellbomb, and there's still one Plague Engineer on the sideboard that probably won't come in this matchup. And I can still cast them off Mox Opal and Chromatic Star, but this is basically Boros. The core of the deck is Painter Grindstone. So turn everything the same color, put your opponent's deck into the graveyard. That's one of the combos. You have all 8 Goblin Welders to make it happen. Like actual Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer. Then Karn can wish for Painter or Grindstone, and Karn can also shut down equipment, which is important for this matchup. Deck explodes pretty hard with Lion's Eye Diamond. It's a Saga deck as well, so it has a grind plan, a secondary grind plan, LOL. And the card that really impressed me when I played this league the first time was Auriok Salvagers. It was a one of in the original Mardu list, and I added a second copy because it was just doing work. I think I won as many games with that one of Salvager as I did with every other combo combined over the course of 5 matches. And adding another one just seems like that's an angle that I'm interested in exploring.
Oh yeah, that's super spooky to me.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing, like, Fatal Push is going to have a hard time hitting Salvagers. Like, you do need to leave up a fetch land or be able to get rid of something at instant speed in order to push the Salvagers. And Prismatic Ending's not going to hit this thing out of your 2-color deck. You have that Ending and Plow split where the whole way up the curve, Ending is better against my deck than Plow, basically on every single option, until we hit Auriok Salvagers at the top of the curve, and then you just wish you had 4 Plows. I think on average, you're going to be happier with the split, but Salvagers is this type of thing that once you test their answers the whole way up the curve, it's just like, bang, can't get bolted, can't get Fatal Pushed, can't get Abrupt Decayed, here's this thing, good luck. However, the concern that I have is Dauthi Voidwalker shuts off the Salvager combo, shuts off any sort of welder shenanigans, and shuts off my Crucible. Like that one card is tough, and the the 1-2 punch of like Dark Ritual, because you know I don't have counter spells. Like you can Dark Ritual, cast Dothy Voidwalker, then Thoughtseize me, and take something like Karn and just cast it right away. And my deck can't beat Karn. So just Dothy Voidwalker does everything in this matchup that you would want out of a single card. And I'm a little worried about it. But I do have the Shotgun Blast potential of just Painter grinding you. And you have a couple instant speed spells and a bunch of discard. But if you don't have the Voidwalker, my welders can loop the things that you've discarded given enough time. I could just turn 1 or turn 2 you. You don't have a lot of answers to things that are already in play. So if I have a fast turn 1 where I cast the Painter and the Grindstone, then pass the turn and kill you on the untap, you're going to have a hard time interacting with that. So there is a lot of tension here. And it will depend on, I think play draw is going to be huge. Like, do you get to cast your discard spell before I put some stuff into play? And the sideboards are going to matter a lot too.
I think this is going to be both the most skill intensive match that we played today and the longest.
There's a good chance of that.
Like both of us have the ability to grind, and both of us attack from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, and there's a lot of toys in this deck, and there's a lot of toys in your deck too. And you're an artifact deck as well. Like Goblin Welder exchanges artifacts in play and into the graveyard. It doesn't, as long as they're controlled by the same player, it doesn't care. Like I could turn your Cauldra into an Umezawa's Jitte mid-combat to make sure like I don't get hit by the Germ, and then I can turn Jitte into Cauldra next turn to make sure that you never get counters. And like I could tread water with that fog. Ensnaring Bridge, you don't have 3 colors of mana in your deck to exile this thing, so that could be a banger. Karn's a banger. Like my top end I think is better than yours, but your disruption is better than mine getting up to the top end. You're clocking as well. Like I have my combo, which is also a clock, but your steady damage is going to add up. Like I am an Ancient Tomb deck on top of everything else that's going on, so this is going to be pretty dynamic. I think we could play 5 matches with these 2 decks and they'd all look different.
I agree with that. Can we take a look at my sideboard real quick?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So I have some absolute bangers in my sideboard, most notably Serenity. This is a card that I was playing because like this deck got absolutely clowned on by the Affinity deck, and it kind of has problems with Urza's Saga construct tokens in particular. So Serenity was the answer that I chose to that. Pithing Needle is something else that I have played in the past as well. But generally speaking, I think sideboarding is going to be very difficult for me because I have so many good options. But minus the Plague Engineer, it would be reasonable to bring in all of the various cards that are in my sideboard. So I am going to have to pick a lane. Like, am I going to shut off your combo potential? Am I going to try to really hate on the graveyard with surgicals? Do I want to play more of a board controlling? We're going to have to see how the matchup feels. But I think sideboarding is going to be exceptionally difficult for me. Sudden Edict is also just like an absolute lol way to disrupt the like, oh, I feel like I've got this. I've got Painter with, a Pyroblast backup, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't envy your decisions you're going to have to make. Like you said, there's so many cards that come in, but like, are you cutting Dark Confidants at some point? Like, do you, like, every card in your main deck has a job, and there's not a lot of fat to trim. So you can't bring in 10 cards, much less 14. You probably can't even bring in 7 cards. But I guess we'll see what you end up doing. Like you are going to have to play it by ear and see how it looks.
Yeah, this is one of those times where I'm just gonna like Yu-Gi-Oh! Heart of the Cards, see where the feel takes me. I don't think this is one of those times where you can sit down and like really figure everything out prior to the match actually happening.
Yeah, I agree with that. And same, even if on my side of the matchup, even if I decide on what macro plan I like the most, of like I am gonna maneuver towards Painter Grindstone at all points, or I am gonna push for the salvager combo at the top end. Like, I don't get to make those calls. I have to look at my opening 7 and decide where it wants to take me, and that is what it is, which is great because you can't level me. Like, you can't read my soul and know that, okay, he's going in on Pain or Grindstone. I'm just going to make sure I can disrupt that because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, if you can predict what I'm doing and metagame me, then you know what I'm doing better than I do.
All right, so chips on the table. Who's taking down this round?
I am going to bet on so I'm going to say it's me with the wild card being Dothy Voidwalker. I think if you stick Dothy Voidwalker early and often, you will make a laugher out of this round. If this card is not forthcoming, and like we talked about, you don't have cantrips, if it's not in your hand, then you don't get it, period. I think I can grind and dance around every other card in this 75 except Dothy Voidwalker, which requires a specific answers while shutting out multiple lines. Everything else does like one or the other. That's what I think is going to happen here.
All right. I think I'm going to take this one down. I think Douthie Voidwalker is very strong, and we haven't talked about Kaya, but Kaya is a beating against this deck because it can both exile cards from the graveyard and also take out like the smaller things in play like Grindstone that matter, and it's also just a win condition, and you don't pressure Planeswalkers very well.
Yeah, Kaya is definitely a beast in this matchup.
All right, well, let's get into it and see how it goes.
All right, good luck in the final round. I'm on the draw, unfortunately, and I am going to keep this hand because it has Ensnaring Bridge, which is one of the best cards in the matchup, but this opening salvo is the scariest. This is the scariest turn of the game. Like, does he have Dark Ritual into Thoughtseize him? Does he have a Dothy Voidwalker immediately? Does he have Voidwalker and Thoughtseize? And then we're just in trouble all kinds of ways? It looks like he had none of the above. Pyrite Spellbomb. So what does this turn look like? If I go Ancient Tomb, Spellbomb, Star, Opal, can I put Ensnaring Bridge into play this turn? Ancient Tomb, I only have 2 zeros, so no. I can put my whole hand into play, though, and play around discard pretty effectively. So I am going to do that. I'm going to play Star, Spellbomb, LED, and Opal. Just putting these cards all into play. Hymn to Turok will leave me almost empty, but Chromatic Star and Pyrite Spellbomb can both draw cards. Pyrite Spellbomb can answer a Stoneforge Mystic or Dark Confidant, all of which are important things. It can also answer Dothy Voidwalker. It's one of the very few cards in my main deck that does that. This does expose the things to his 2 of Prismatic Ending, but I think that's a risk I'm willing to take. He has way more discard than he has Prismatic Endings. This is his main deck here. There's a lot of 2-drop creatures that I'm happy to Spellbomb. There's not a lot of answers to the things that I've put into play. There's a lot of ways to mess with my hand. And if at any point I draw Auriok Salvagers, I actually just have the whole combo rolled up right now. LED makes infinite mana, Spellbomb does infinite damage once I have the infinite mana. I could actually rip Salvagers off the top with Mox Opal right now and win the game. Even throw a Hymn to Turok. Could also just cast Gigantha next turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, I'm 1 mana short of casting Gigantha. I can use LED to wish for it, and then pay 5. Like, this 5/5 creature could matter at some point in this game. Unlikely, but weirder things have happened. Okay, here comes Liliana. Maybe? Or is this the Voidwalker plus Thoughtseize? It is Lily. You got it. Time to double check answers to Ensnaring Bridge in the deck. It's basically Liliana going ultimate is literally the only answer in the main deck to an Ensnaring Bridge. Goblin Engineer is going to die anyway to the minus effect on Liliana, so I'm going to discard Goblin Engineer. I'm going to cast Ensnaring Bridge and just try to leave my whole hand in play where discard doesn't hurt me that bad. I think having lots of mana and focusing on comboing is supposed to be my plan in this match. Discarding land before making a land drop is kind of interesting. He could have a Thoughtseize here, but he would have had to draw it this turn because he would have Thoughtseize me turn 1 if he could have. Ending my Spellbomb. Okay, so I can draw a card or deal 2 to Liliana. I think I want to deal 2 to Liliana. Yeah, that Liliana's ultimate is going to have to be basically his whole plan facing down this ensnaring bridge. And I'm here to make life hard for Phil. Sorry, Phil. Here's ensnaring bridge. Now we get to play this weird Liliana game. Ooh, Dark Ritual. Had the Voidwalker, okay. And Dark Confidant. Alright. You get a mountain out of my hand. And I'm just going to have to cast everything I draw for the rest of the game. And hope that he dies to his own Bob. There's a diamond. I could cast Gigantha, but I don't think that's good or important. And Chromatic Star doesn't make mana right now because it doesn't go to the graveyard with Voidwalker. There's another Voidwalker. Alright. It's the classic Ensnaring Bridge versus deck full of creatures matchup. Racing to Liliana. And still no action here. Found a swamp off of Voidwalker. I think I'm supposed to fetch. I want to maximize my good draws here. Looking for Karn. Karn wins the game. Versus Saga is not bad. Saga can get Grindstone. Or I think I have a main deck Bathing Needle. I do have a main deck Needle that... So Lily, you drew Wasteland, you monster. We're fighting now. We're no longer cool. Yeah, tutoring up the Needle would have happened in time to at least remove Lily. Okay, Grindstone. Grindstone. And now we'll see if he wants to pop Lily immediately and what piles he makes as a result. Like, I'll keep any medium reasonable pile that contains Ensnaring Bridge. He could just go all your permanents or Ensnaring Bridge, in which case I have to take all my permanents, I think. So it's even that's close. Yeah, spending a turn, making both players discard makes sense here. And do I want to take 2 life to Grindstone him? Do I think that matters at all? And I don't think that it does. Just drop Painter and win the game. Welder, okay. So I can play Welder, which he should not care about at all. Or actually, that's a little bit interesting. I wish this came down a turn earlier to waste some time off Liliana. It could go for a big pop right now. Or it could just draw Swords of Plowshares. That works too. Well played. The classic Deadguy L. I'm not doing anything in top deck mode. Alright. Separating all my permanents. Go ahead, make your piles. Is it Ensnaring Bridge versus everything? It is, okay. That's a reasonable pile to make. I'm going to sacrifice the Ensnaring Bridge, and I'm dead pretty quickly here. But I don't think I'm winning the other version of the game. Or am I? Like, if I literally just always... Like, Liliana can minus any number of times. Maybe I just fucked that up. Or maybe I win the game. Sorry. Ba-da-bop-ba-da-bop. Combo. I'll give him black cards on the way out. Alright, yeet your deck into the graveyard, please. And you're up. Glad I made the choice I did. Though I think it was pretty... Like, there might have been a strong argument to leave Ensnaring Bridge in play. I'm going to sideboard, and then if I have time after sideboarding to review the options, I'm going to take it. I need Galvanic Blast and Prismatic Endings. I can make 3 colors with the deck. I could actually make more than 3 colors with Chromatic Star and Opal. I could exile extremely expensive things. I think a second Needle in the main for Liliana might make sense, or do I want to leave it as a wish target for Karn? What makes less sense? I think Goblin Engineer. Oh, Pyroblast, obviously. That one's not for this matchup. And I generally like cutting Mox Opals against decks that are grindy, because you can't really afford bad top decks. So I think shaving a little lower on Mox Opal is fine. I'm really worried about Serenity, so I do need to leave some amount of game to get the game over quickly in the deck. Meekstone is really good against Kaldra and Voidwalker. Looking back at this deck, there's no way to make a third color of mana, and no way to burn me. Oh, nope, Kaya. Okay. Nope, I was right to play to my outs. Kaya would eventually win a game where Liliana just eats all my non-bridge permanents. I'm thinking maybe I should just have maximum Painter Grindstone in the main deck and be off the graveyard stuff even more, and let Karn get the Crucible if I want it. I am definitely missideboarded. I should be committing to painting harder and graveyard less. And Nile Spellbomb isn't really important to the matchup either way. So mistakes were made there. I'll clean it up if there's a game 3. I am gonna keep this hand. It's fine. I'm not gonna mulligan aggressively in the matchup. The deck has a lot of tutors in it, a lot of bangers, a lot of different things that can happen. So I'm not gonna commit myself to any one thing that could go poorly. Okay, so I'm gonna cast Welder off of... I mean, the Great Furnace is a little dangerous because you could have Serenity, but I am gonna cast Welder and get the LED into play. I might have a turn 2 here depending on what disruption he has available. I imagine the Welder's not long for the world, one way or the other. Alright, Ending is gone. Ending clears the Welder, that's fine. Wasteland. Mana is not what I'm gated on right now. That was an excellent draw. So now I get to Ancient Tomb. I might have tapped things a little quickly there, but it's okay. Ancient Tomb. I'm going to present my entire combo and ask if they can do anything about it here. The Goblin Engineer is going to entomb a Grindstone, and then I'm going to cast Painter and paint it green. Doesn't matter what I paint it. I guess painting it blue could represent Pyroblast. Alright, my combo is on board. Go. Discard is off the table. Removal is excellent right now. Serenity's too slow. We got a Verdant Catacombs getting fetched. And this could be the other Prismatic Ending for 2. Really hope it's just like Stoneforge Mystic. Okay, that's both Prismatic Endings cast. Left me with the Painter, which I guess makes sense. It's just draw Grindstone, right? Or Urza Saga? Salvagers. So this is not infinite anything yet. I mean, it's infinite mana, but that doesn't... It basically just casts Gigantha. Alright. It's Salvager time. So white, salvage, then make white, buy this back. Oh wait, this is lethal because I can buy back the Grindstone. He needs a Surgical right now to win the game. And I think that window just closed. Yeah, because I can get the Grindstone back. That's the match, kids. He had Necromentia in hand and couldn't cast it. And GG. Salvagers. That's what we talked about in the deck tech of if I can just dumpster with the combo before he gets set up, that's how we cheese out. That obviously I got super lucky in game 1, but game 2 I was just like question, ran out of answers. GG's, Phil. We're back in the booth and we're done. We did it.
Yeah, that was a blast. I really enjoyed playing those games, and I think we put on a high level show for the viewers.
I think so. All of them were close. All of them were pretty close to our predictions, actually. We'll start with the 8-Walla deck, Hollowvine, whatever we're calling that deck. You killed me for Xaxes on the turn that I stabilized. Yep. If I drew True Name Nemesis one turn before, I did. If I just drew those 2 cards, like True Name and then Wasteland in the opposite order, I probably win that game. And just cheesed in there for Xaxes, and you easily won game 1. I did what I needed to do game 2, and then you just got over the finish line in game 3, and that's basically what we predicted the matchup would look like.
Yeah, that matchup was really cool, and I did something that I haven't done very many times, and I actually used LED as a bait spell at one point in that match so that I could successfully end up putting a Vengevine into play.
Did I fall for it?
Yeah.
All right. I believe that on my side during the commentary. I mean, that was 3 hours ago at the point of recording now, but I'm pretty sure at every turn one, I was saying, if he has two things, I'm dead. Because that's something we didn't really talk about in the original deck tech, where I said it's my job to force the will the first thing that goes on the stack. We didn't talk about if you have two things. Like every time I forced a Burning Inquiry, I was like, oh god, this is bait. LED's coming. And it never really did, but there was a lot of tension there, for sure. You managed to thread the needle. And honestly, from playing the matchup, it feels a lot worse than I thought it did on paper. I hadn't actually played that matchup myself. I had seen it played. I'm familiar with both decks, but that felt like I was way farther behind than it would appear on paper in reality.
Yeah, I also had more opportunities to get back into the game than I expected. There was one of the games where like you stuck a Ragavan, you countered my first thing, and I was like, well, okay, I'm dead. And then I think I won that game 5 turns later or something like that.
I was talking about that. I actually boarded all but one Ragavan out in games 2 and 3 because you have just infinite free X1s. Ragavan's not doing anything. It's basically on chump block duty for Vengevine. Like, I'm just trying to tread water. That deck is really bad at winning the game in any sort of fast order. You definitely are settled in. You grind into top deck mode, and then you just bet that your Urza Sagas and Ragavans and things like that, your individual cards that generate multiple threats, will be worth more than your opponent's top deck. But when your opponent's top decks also bring back Vengevine, it's just always shitty.
It's like having a weird little bit of reach just sitting in the graveyard that you always just have to be thinking about.
Yep. And in our game one, you had a Burning Inquiry, while my hand was Plow, Ending, and your Inquiry let me keep my two endings, but took the Plow, and it dumped Vengevine for you. And if that just happens in the other direction, I Plow Vengevine, and it was just so close in so many different ways, and that was just a really exciting dynamic matchup of Magic.
Oh man, the burning inquiries are scary. So like one of the burning inquiries I cast, I had double hollow one in hand, and I'm like, I can either instantly win or instantly lose the game on the spot, depending on how this goes.
I definitely did a victory lap when one of your inquiries discarded it was like land LED hollow one. I was like, yes, that's not what he wanted at all. We need those. What about
Right.
Bant versus Red?
So I mulled into Oblivion that round.
You sure did.
That's the sort of thing that happens with that. But despite that, I was on your butt the whole game. Like those games were still scary for you, I imagine.
Yeah, the game one, we talked a lot about how Chalice doesn't blank control anymore. And while that is true, it's you don't get just game locked out, game set match because you had a turn one Chalice. But there are certainly draws where Chalice is bad. In our game one, you had turn one Chalice. I had turn two Sylvan Library. I had an Ice Fang Coatl. I saw like 7 or 8 extra cards that game. And my hand at the end of the game was like Plow, Ponder, Brainstorm, Endurance. And your Chalice just shut it down. I never lose that game if there's not a Chalice in play, but there was. And then when you boarded them out and I get more control over the game, I think game 2 was close and game 3 wasn't. The one where you mulled to 4, my hand was just rolled up. It was like Forest, Plow, Ice Fang, Coatl, Uro. I was just ready. But yeah, our game 2 was really close, and game 1 came down to, can I find Terminus or Prismatic Ending off of the Sylvan Library before I'm dead?
There were a surprising number of decision points on my end, despite the fact that I didn't have very many things to work with. So for example, I put a Fury under a Chrome Mox to play around the Ice Fang Coatl that could flash in mid combat and like be one of your best outs to the current board. There were some things like that that were really cool on my end.
Yeah, I remember that turn happening, and you tutored up that Chrome Mox with Saga. I was like, okay, what could he do for 2 mana? And I was like, well, here's my Coatl. It's the only play I have. Yep, got stomped. I am shocked and surprised. Then I died on the next turn. I forgot to even mention Dress Down. Like, I had a Sylvan Library trigger that was looking for Terminus, Prismatic Ending, or Dress Down, and just missed on all 3. You even had the Haste creature to deny the next round. I paid for just to get a card deeper into the deck for the next Sylvan Library. I was like, 2 and 6 are the same in this deck. Like, I need cards right now, and had the Haste creature to punish. Like, that was a really exciting game too.
Match 3 rather. It was a little weird that game 1.
Yeah, I had the early Ensnaring Bridge, which your deck only has one out to, and it's Kaya. We got into the position where you could ultimate your Liliana, and you doubled off the Voidwalker, so most of my combos were off, most of my cards were off, Grindstone in play, and in my head, I was thinking, do I just grind you twice to put 4 cards in your graveyard, and then let us go to decking, and just hope that I hit Kaya on those mills? And just always choose to keep Ensnaring Bridge no matter how many times you ultimate Liliana. I decided to bet on the deck instead and keep all my other permanents when you ultimated Liliana. Obviously just ripped the Painter Servant immediately and killed you. I had, I think, 2 draw steps to do that.
Yeah, you had the 1 draw step there, and then you had a Chromatic Star in play that you could crack for another look.
I couldn't because you had Voidwalker, and that's when it dies.
Oh shoot, I didn't even realize that. I thought you had an extra draw.
No, Chromatic Sphere gets around that. Chromatic Star actually has to die.
Alright, well, today I learned.
Yep, luckily I did actually recognize that immediately, which is lucky because I would normally miss that until it's too late, but I did not commit one of my onboard resources to not draw a card. I did see it right away.
I wasn't sure how much I could greed on the Liliana Ultimate pile and still have you get rid of the Ensnaring Bridge. And so I decided just not to risk it at all.
I was talking about your possible piles for like 2 or 3 turns leading as she just ticked up. I was like, the safest thing he can do is just everything and bridge, and I might still keep bridge. I think if you had left me with any material at all in the bridge pile, I would have kept the bridge pile. Like if you separated Grindstone from the bridge, I'd probably keep the bridge pile. But yeah, I think you were right to just put me to the test.
I had to plus my Liliana up to 7 before just ultimating because like I have 2 Lilianas and 1 Kaya that are basically my only ways to win, other than like finding your Karn or something like that off a Douthie Voidwalker. But like basically I needed to keep that Liliana around, and that was unfortunately giving you more and more turns to just find a painter.
Yeah, I actually didn't even consider the fact that if I committed to that just keep bridge always line and hope you don't draw Kaya, or hope that, well, you're obviously going to draw her eventually, but hope you don't find her in time or that I mill her first. I wasn't even thinking about the fact that we'll eventually draw the Karn that I can't cast because I have no permanents, and you get to get it with Douthie Voidwalker. Then you can animate my bridge and plow it. Like, you had many more outs there than I originally thought. So I'm glad I didn't do the stupid bet on Ensnaring Bridge thing. Just bet on the top deck instead.
Yeah, and then in the final game of that match, I had kind of an interesting decision of whether or not I was supposed to get rid of the painter or whether or not I was supposed to get rid of the engineer. I decided to get rid of the engineer because, like, if I don't end up closing the game quickly, that thing being around is a nuisance and allows you to jump through so many things that I'm otherwise doing. And I did not take into account the Auriok Salvagers being a top deck that just killed me.
Honestly, I forgot that Grindstone was a 1-drop until that was happening. Like, if you watch my side of the video, I'm like, oh, Salvagers, I can make infinite mana, cast Gigantha, and then I'm way ahead on board. And then when I clicked on the Salvagers to pick up the LED the first time, Moto highlighted the Grindstone. I was like, oh, he's just dead. Got there. Yeah, Salvagers. We did talk a lot about Salvagers being a scary card in the deck, in the matchup, just hard to remove, thick AF, a value machine, and luckily, there it was.
Yeah, but that was an excellent set of exhibition matches, in my opinion. You know, we played very well. If I allow myself to pat us on the back here. And I think the matches we decided to show off ended up being really interesting in very different ways.
I think so too. This is a good showcase of the format. I didn't make any egregious punts that I'm usually good for 1 or 2 over the course of 5 matches, so it seems like 3 matches is my sweet spot. Or I was just taking it more seriously. Hard to say. Thank you to our Patreons and our Discords who organized this thing. Wouldn't have done this without community input, and it was definitely fun to do.
Thanks for having me on, and I was happy to have you on, because we kind of do this whole 2-way street thing here. If you are watching on my channel, check out BoshNRoll for his side of the matches, and if you are watching on Brian's channel, I am ThrabenU if you want to see how things played out on my end.
Yep, all of Phil's links and my links will be in my video description, and I'm sure mine will be in his. Make sure to like and subscribe to both channels, and check out the Patreon, check out the YouTube memberships, check out our podcast, The Eternal Glory. All of those links are in the video description as well. Thanks for watching.
See ya.